This episode is brought to you by Query. Query is a full funnel media agency powered by data and creativity to connect brands with customers who will love their products. To learn more about how we can help you improve your brand awareness and performance marketing, visit weareqry.com. Uh, I'm really excited. Joe is super smart. He's on our episode today. He's the director of marketing at Stash Ventures. Thank you so much for joining us, Joe.
Oh, it's great to be here,
So
Samir.
much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Super excited to
Yeah.
be here as well.
We've known each other for a while now, and I am always amazed by your background. So let's start there. Tell us about how you got to where you are today and where you are.
Well, right now I'm the director of marketing for Stash Ventures, as you mentioned. How did I get here? It's been an interesting career. I started, and I won't get too far deep into it, but I started my career as actually a graphic designer. I wanted to in the art world. How was I going to make money in the art world? My parents were
Yeah,
scared, didn't know what graphic design was, that kind of thing.
of course.
But slowly, as I built my career up over at agencies here and there, I really enjoyed the business side of things as well. So, um, my biggest growth, I guess you could say, from agency work was then moving to an in-house brand named Carhartt. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Carhartt.
Yeah, of course.
It's a workwear brand based out of Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah.
And I was the creative director there for the marketing team. But really fell in love with brand, like being
Nice.
in-house with the brand. It's still family owned. You become part of the family. And it was a great experience, but it also got me interested in the business side. So I was working with marketers there, probably one of the first ones that started breaking down consumer demographics that we can talk specifically to certain consumers like young workers, Hispanic workers, pretty broad level. We were launching women's line, a full women's line
Right.
back then. So I was really fascinated by that. My minor was psychology, so I really
Okay.
liked that part of it. That's why I was kind of gravitated towards the marketing side. So then I worked at another agency for a while in Detroit after Carhartt, but then found myself at Wolverine Worldwide as because I wanted to get back with the brand. Like being in
Yeah.
house with the brand is something I really enjoyed. So Wolverine holds many brands, shifting over time since I've been there. When I started there, it was with Hush Puppies, Cushy, and Sebago, which ironically they don't have any of those brands anymore. It's not my fault,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
let's move. Just over time, they've made different shifts. But within that company, it was great because I got to move between brands from Marrow to Wolverine and Cat and a bunch of other areas there, and kind of moved around from the art world to like international marketing and
Right.
e-commerce marketing for cat footwear. And so I did both at the same time. And if I jump back to when I started in graphic design, I was probably on one of the first teams that developed websites in like 95, 96.
That's kind of cool.
We were part of I was part of a team that was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Uh, we were the design part of the team, but this was three teams happened to share this building, which was fun. We had what's called a librarian back then, and tech people. And then
Okay.
we were the art people. So we formed kind of an
That's
alliance.
cool.
Um, and the gentleman that was running the library side was the first person to coin the term information architecture, and he wrote a book out of
That's really cool.
that. He was a U of M grad, and anyways, fast forward back to Cat. I love being on the digital side of the business, like
Right.
developing the web and building the program around their ecom and that. So, and then I did ecom at Merrill, and then finally had an opportunity where I met you was become vice president of marketing at Hook down in South Carolina. I'm Michigan born and bred. My family's here. Spent some time at Hook and just realized, I kind of wanted to go back home.
Yeah.
I had a good experience down there. It's a great brand. Uh, and this opportunity came up, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this because Stash Ventures is a cannabis company that owns cultivation and two stores, Timber and Cloud. We have almost 20 stores in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And, I looked at it in a different way. I'm like, okay, if Buffalo Trace called me, I probably would go there. That's an
Yeah.
alcohol. My wife, who has rheumatoid arthritis, has benefited greatly from cannabis. It's not a
Yeah.
person that wants to get super high.
Yeah.
It helps her sleep. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to approach this. And I talked to the owner. His name is Scott Moorhead, who's one of the best people I've ever worked for in my life. And if I didn't talk to him, I probably never would have came. But
Very cool.
after talking with him and where the company is and what we want to be as an organization, and the caring of what we do, is amazing. So
Yeah, I think I love your background because uh you say you're a brand guy, that you like being on the brand side, but you've always worked at portfolio businesses. And
yeah,
so it's always been, I always say, Joe, that you've got this little bit of agency in you because
yes,
it gives you this opportunity. 'Cause the beauty of portfolio businesses, and for anyone listening, if you are not sure if you want to go brand side or agency side, portfolio business is right down the middle.
it is.
You get the benefit of everything, right? But and now you're at Stash, and it is a true singular brand. You are dedicated to kind of building this brand up now, right?
Ironically, it's slightly portfolio, right? So
Oh, interesting.
our cultivation side is called High Minded, and our product
Okay.
there. So we have to build a product brand.
Hmm.
We also have to build a retail brand, and
Oh,
we have
that's kind of cool,
we have
actually.
two retail brands. So I actually have three brands. So Timber Cloud, High Minded. We're looking at what we might do with that down the road. Do we consolidate? Do we stay where we're at? Do we come up with a third one? And
Yeah,
bring them all under one. But yeah, it's still kind of a portfolio in a weird way. It's
I
still one
love it.
owner though, which is nice. So we can make decisions quicker than a board. It's just the owner.
Yes,
Let's do this. So we can move pretty quick.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love it. And so I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love you to talk a little bit about more about it because I think it's such a unique and such a powerful thing that Stash Ventures has. Is what makes it different than other cannabis brands?
Well, people. So we
Yeah.
have a thing that's called the five promises that we live by, that we try to help everyone else live by, because the cannabis business can be uh it's got some unscrupulous people in the business, no doubt about it,
Yeah.
right? Some that don't know how to pay their bills, some that don't really care about their product. That's not us, right? We
Yeah.
we are If we could be the Starbucks of cannabis, that would be our goal, right?
Yeah.
But we have five promises that everybody, it's on everybody's walls. We talk about it every week. It's be authentic, be yourself,
Yeah.
be connect. So make sure that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, but
Yeah.
share your time, your talents. Care is our
Mm.
third one. We care about the people around us. So, if we can help somebody in our company, like with empathy, we do that. Try to inspire. So, if,
Mm.
mentoring, try to mentor my team, or inspire other people. And then obviously the last one is, drive the business, make sure you
Yeah.
understand our goals and that kind of things. But
Yeah.
that's last,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we have to go through all those things, but we also want to drive our business. Now, it's not just slogans at our company. So
That's the key, right?
it's very much part of Scott's culture. That's why I came over. He talked to me and he wrote a book on this. Like,
Oh, no
I'm
way.
not trying to shill him here, but he has a
Yeah.
book on
Yeah.
where I came from in the world, and then understanding what Scott has done about caring about the people that works for him. Um, it was very important. So you can check him out on Amazon if you want to.
Yeah, Joe, so I love the core values, and I do love that that one's last because so at Query we think about this too. Our perspective is always if you do the core values, business revenue will come with it, right?
Yep.
And so I love that like concept and agree with that because I don't know, a big fan of karma, right? You do the right thing, it'll come back to you twofold. So
You're
it's
hoping
just
so,
like
right?
it's like
Like,
yeah,
and eventually the people that don't believe in the core values that your company has, or they'll find their way, as we call them, promote themselves to customer.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. That is great. Let's talk advertising though. You
Yeah.
are an awesome brand guy. I have loved all the kind of brand thinking that you do, and I've had the pleasure of being a part of a lot of that. So let's talk about this, but from a cannabis point of view, right? Like
Yeah.
it adds so much unique elements to it. So talk to us about just what are the major challenges that come with we can always break it down into two. There's going to be like challenges with
Yeah.
cannabis and then challenges as you look at it with the business.
Yeah. So okay, well, let's say challenge of the cannabis. Well,
Mm.
it's seen as dirty, right? It's a
Yeah.
drug. It's not pushed past the kind of taboo.
Yeah.
People are afraid to say, oh, I imbibe or whatever you wanted to say about
Yeah.
that. Uh, it's changing, but you got to, the idea, I think what is the brand of cannabis, maybe at least in my lifetime, has probably started with Cheech and Chong, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
like they kind of created a weed culture of like stoner, um, you know, and all around like someone who's not very smart, which
Right.
isn't necessary. It's not true at all, actually.
Yeah.
Now there are people like in any business, like even in the alcohol business, and I'll make a comparison to that. It's like there's some people that it's not a judgment. It's just that will enjoy a fine bourbon, and there's some
Yep.
people that just want to get their cheapest pop off and get drunk, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's that's everywhere. That's in any kind of business. We're trying to take cannabis business, like I said, to like hopefully like a Starbucks level. Like we don't want people to come into our stores and just get stuff to get wasted at home.
Hammered. Yeah.
It's really not
Yeah.
what we're about. We want them to enjoy what really good product, which is why we make product because we know how it's made and tested and all that, and elevate it. And hopefully teach a different kind of culture
Right.
to what cannabis is. Now, the other side of that is how do you tell people about it so that you
Yeah.
can change the narrative? That's the toughest part because we can't, the world's going digital and we barely can, right? So
Yeah.
we're a lot of brands right now. We're for those that I don't know when they're going to watch this, but we're talking
Yeah.
Black Friday, probably one of the
Yeah.
biggest shopping
Yeah.
days, if not the biggest shopping day of the year, right? So, and we take part in that as well. But most people are like flipping through their Instagram, looking at like all
Yeah.
these Black Friday deals. We can't do that.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can't say we're selling something federally, not ready to sell, and use those outlets. So we have to kind of like work with that. LinkedIn is especially great for us because they're cannabis friendly. So we're testing some things
I did
there to
not
see how
realize that. Yeah.
advertising works. Yeah. So looking into that this next week, actually, start putting some money in that. So maybe I should talk to Query about that.
I
See how we can
appreciate
work
that.
with LinkedIn. Um, and then we have to, it's kind of like old school now, like build a lot of physical things, billboards, things like that. It's boots on the ground. Um,
Yeah.
the hardest part though, Samir, is the competition is not mature in the marketing business.
Yeah.
So all their marketing has just become make it cheaper and people will buy it.
Yeah, it's
Very
forcing it
hard,
into a commodity real fast, and
real fast.
and the hard part about it is, exactly for what you said, unless you do ads that don't even talk about the product you sell, you can't, um you're gonna have to create a brand around it in a way that you don't talk about the product, and to force your brand to get out of the commodity world and be
Right.
able to actually do anything with it. And so, yeah, I think it is fascinating, um, what you have to do to just speak about these, and I think it speaks to why it's so fragmented, right? Like, why there
Yeah, absolutely.
isn't a singular, business that you're like, "Oh, yeah, I know they are the Starbucks of,
Yeah.
marijuana," right? Like, it doesn't exist because can you imagine if you couldn't talk about coffee on Facebook
That and even
and
and get this too. Like
like
imagine going to Starbucks, but you're not allowed to drink the coffee in that store.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
like you can't even like have someone try it in your store
yeah,
and say, here's why you should like it. And we can't consume in the store. So
right. And
Starbucks
it's
you can.
interesting because alcohol is allowed to do that too, because you
Absolutely.
can you can go do a tasting for sure.
Right.
The one thing that I do find fascinating is that, marijuana is very similar to alcohol and coffee in that it is a very, social thing also, right?
Absolutely.
Like, there are people
100%.
that will do it by themselves, but it is definitely something that people do in groups. And so, how do you guys think about that when you think about your brand in terms of, like,
We
powering word
do.
of mouth, right?
It's the biggest part of it, right? So we just kind of launched our brand video for High Minded and we made sure that it was social.
Yeah.
We instead of like talking about it in terms of like it's going to get you high or
Yeah.
crazy or whatever, um, we have like what we call the effect spectrum. Like, how do you want to feel? Do you want to chill? Do you want to be active? Do you want to do that? And we've kind of created products
Cool.
that work with that. Now, listen, everybody's body chemistry is different, so this is why it also makes it hard. It's
Yeah.
like people like if you grow up when you were at least when I grew up. if you are a hyper boy, like ADHD or something, like give them coffee because coffee, the caffeine actually slows them down, right? So for everybody
So
else, it
interesting.
speeds them. It's everybody else, it speeds them up. So everybody's body chemistry is different and can react differently to any kind of product that alters your chemistry, from caffeine to THC and terpenes, right, which are
Yeah.
in cannabis. So, but long story short, we're hoping to sell an experience and then have that experience be social, and then hopefully when people do gather, they think about our brand.
Mm.
And word of mouth is probably, as you said, it's still by far our biggest driver of people, because what I've learned in my almost a year here now in the cannabis is that the culture is very strong and they know their stuff. When I say they know
Mhm.
their stuff, like scientists, that's why people think, well, they're not dumb
Yep.
people. They know, just as if a bourbon person knows how well that was distilled here and it's 15 years. It's got this. They know all that stuff. The cannabis people know it down to a science. Like, oh, this
Yeah.
strain came from this clone from this guy who started it in
Nice.
1975, and like it's an amazing culture. They know their stuff, so you can't like just say it's going to do this, because the connoisseurs, the canna connoisseurs, as we say, will definitely find you out. And what makes it another challenge is that there, as we try to build a brand and a business, you have to remember that cannabis is counterculture. It's almost
Yeah.
against the man, right? So they don't
Right.
want to buy weed from the man,
Right. Yeah.
right? So you have to, and but we also want our people to have health care that work for us,
Right.
right? Because we care about our people. We have our five promises. We want to build a business where I would say the Vans, has a great
Yeah.
alternative type customer. Um, but it's very tough, because if you go too far to the corporate side, you'll lose a vast amount of
Yeah.
customers.
That's fascinating.
And at the same
Yeah.
time, we have to grow that ring of customers, right? We can't just always
Right.
sell to, um, the current cannabis customer. I want also to reach I call it they get tired of hearing it at work because they're not used to it. Because it's like, I want the Lululemon mom that wants to trade a
Yeah.
glass of wine for a gummy. Are we going to be
Yeah.
rich off of her? No, but she's going to tell her friend, like, oh, you know what?
Right.
Didn't get a hangover the day after. I was really calm. I went to bed. It was great. And it worked out awesome. So,
Yeah. I think that that's amazing because I always one of the unique things about cannabis, and I mean, a lot of brands experience this, but
mhm,
cannabis, especially because it's so big, the subcultures within the culture of cannabis. Because you talked about Cheech and Chong, that's one culture. There's the Snoop Dogg culture, is another culture.
absolutely.
It's the
Street culture. Yep.
getting together and wanting to smoke together, and then there's doing it, imbibing it by yourself, and then there are the people that are like uh, uh, so curious about every element of it. And then there are people that are like, whatever you give me, man. Like
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
Or
it's
the
like
cheapest. I want the cheapest, highest
yeah.
THC, buddy. That's what
Yeah.
I
And
want.
it's interesting. It's like kind of like wine, right? Like you've got the wine
Absolutely.
sommelier and you got the guy that's just like, all right, cool. The box, I'll take it. We're good. And but
But you know what's the difference, Samir? Can I bring this real
yeah,
quick? Is what's interesting to me is like, okay, I just went through Thanksgiving. We all did yesterday
yeah,
in the United States. Nobody thinks twice. Like, oh, my dad brought his Budweiser. That's what he likes.
yeah.
We've got bourbon. We've got this, and no one cares. We're all drinking. Do you imagine if, like, I foresee, hopefully, in the next 3 to 5 years, oh, dude, I got this gummy. Do you want to try this? Like, as a family, like, like it was always something like, uh, I can remember 20 years ago, or like, you can't smoke pot with your kid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I can drink with my son. We just had a bourbon yesterday, right? No
Yeah.
biggie. Doesn't know what he's
Yeah.
25 years old, no problem. But I still can't, like, even though I'm in the business, I still have my own hangups that I gotta, like, well, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I don't smoke, but there's other ways, like a gummy or whatever, an edible or tincture or something
Yeah.
like that. Um, I just don't feel, I still not there myself. So
Yeah.
I think I have to be in the mindset too, and bring it apart and all that
Well,
stuff.
it's like amazing because like this is the beauty of brand work, right? Because you
Right.
have to not only keep in mind the brand, what it stands for, what you need to communicate, and then how your customer even thinks about it. To bring it back to apparel, because I know you have some
Yeah,
experience
yeah. Of
there,
course.
it's like the sustainability message, right? Like
Right.
sustainability is like another example of, okay, people care about it, people care about it, people care about it, but how much do they care about it? Is it enough to move their wallet? On the cannabis side, it's I want to talk about it, I want to talk about sharing it, but how much are they willing to actually share it? Like how wide does that ring go right now? How many people are you actually going to tell about it? And in what areas too, right? Because like
Right.
geographically, it's very different too. New Jersey, California versus Texas, Florida, Alabama. Those areas, the cultural thinking around marijuana is so different in each geography too.
It is. It's a good way. And so interesting thing about that. Okay, so culturally in our own company, we purchased Cloud
Hmm.
in this past February, which was basically an east side of Michigan, Detroit area, more urban
Okay.
areas. We owned Timber prior to that, which is on the west
Hmm.
side of Michigan, more rural hikers. Like it's,
Yeah.
there's a whole hiking culture that loves cannabis that's outdoors, which is how Timber
Yeah.
was kind of branded, like we're your outdoor cannabis brand.
Yeah.
Um, so now we're marrying cultures, learning that like, well, there's a totally different, you got Detroit culture is, for lack of a better term, Snoop Dogg culture, very hip hop, you know, big music. You go in the stores, music's really big. It's like Vegas. It's fun. It's awesome. And you come into our Timber stores and it's serene, quiet, yoga studio like.
Fascinating.
Uh, but we're finding, but growing, it's harder to grow that culture
Yeah.
to buy what the Vegas culture is, so to speak. Party culture, I guess is a way to say it.
It's so interesting you say this because this brings us back to the top of the podcast episode where we were talking about portfolio brands. And
Yeah,
now the question becomes, do you create a single brand for all of these cultures, or do you
right,
create a multitude of brands that then become kind of this is for this is for this, and this is
right.
who you resonate with? And I guess my question to you, Joe, is how do you figure that out? Like, what's the process to
Well,
say,
I think it's super hard to figure out right now because there's one big obstacle right now is that the business itself is cannibalizing itself with the drop of prices, right?
right?
It's let's say like everybody followed suit in leggings. So I say
Mhm.
Lululemon because people are paying hundreds of dollars for the same material that probably is at Target,
Right.
right? So you've got $20 leggings fighting 100 to $200 leggings. Now, obviously, cut, fit, performance, all that stuff fits into that world. But let's just say Lululemon dropped all the way down to 20 and everybody was at now 15. They're all fighting like, well, if Lululemon's 15, I got to be 5 because I'm Target,
Right.
right? Because why would they buy Target brand if they could get Lululemon for $15, right?
Right.
Right. So that's what's happening right now. So we're trying to kind of make it through the shakeout. But to get back to your thing, I think we have to maybe figure out what the current customer wants before we grow the bigger customer. I don't know if we can do it all
Right.
at once. It's a little scary. Um, Trying to get um, the outer core customer to try the Lululemon mom. Like,
Yeah.
is maybe it is. We talk about this internally all the time. Timber's a very friendly name. You know, there's a store in Michigan called House of Dank. I'm not sure that's the
Yeah.
most friendly
Yeah.
name for
Yeah.
people that don't want to necessarily be part of cannabis culture. But maybe, if I'm in a, we're thinking about like, well, if we partnered with yoga studios all across West Michigan and from a serene timber point of view, could that work?
Yeah.
But maybe that's 3 years down the road. Maybe it's not ready yet. Maybe we're trying it
Right.
too early. We're trying it too early instead of like, how about we, in my head, we're talking as a team. It's like, and as a team, maybe we just have to like talk about cannabis itself first before
Yeah.
we start parsing it into different areas.
It's like education first, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you even get people to recognize, like, you said it. I took a gummy and I had no hangover versus I had, a few glasses of wine and I felt like crap the next day, right?
Right.
Like it's just like things
Right.
like that. Um, so yeah, I think it's such a fascinating world, Joe, and I love kind of what you're working on. So here is where it gets even more difficult for
Yeah.
you, that I'm sure. So you're doing all this marketing stuff. We've come to the realization that word of mouth is your largest, or like is one of the most important ways of which you find new customers. How
Right.
do you measure? How do you know what's working?
Well, we do have some digital programs, right? So
Okay.
we partner with some digital companies that do work with our cannabis business, and we have our own app for each store, right? So you
Okay.
can choose your rewards app. So we can message directly to them. So
Right.
our goal over the past year was get as many people to download the app as possible for the year, as much as we can. Just download it, please. Now,
Yeah.
this next phase of our marketing is to incentivize them to opt into messaging.
Right.
Right. So you got your rewards app. That's cool. You come in every time you buy something, it like anybody else, you'll get things towards that. Now, what we're trying to do now is say, like, but if you opt into messaging, you'll get a daily deal. You'll get this, you'll get birthday stuff, you'll get other things, but you got to opt into your notifications on your phone.
Mm,
Not necessarily we would love it. Text is great, email is great. But if you take the actual notification, turn that on, it doesn't cost us anything extra like texting does, and
yeah.
it'll just pop up on your phone. And then, oh, we know that you're near the store, driving
Right.
by, and that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
stuff. So that's been probably one of our saving digital graces, is to have this rewards program and app. So now you ask, how do we know it's working? Well, we can one to one, we know that customer has come in, and we can actually plot that digitally and say, okay, we've gotten growth. So one of my goals for the year was to grow our digital baskets through the app
Right.
and through online. You can order online at all of our stores, but it just creates a cart. You have to go
Right.
physically to the store to pay and pick up your product. Obviously, we can't ship it to you. That's federal. You
Right.
can do that. So we're just trying to really push that, because if I can get them to think about us just no different than Wendy's, McDonald's, they want you to, if
Yeah.
you put your order on your phone before you left, you're not going to see a sign on the way there because you already paid for your Happy Meal.
Yeah.
You're just going to go to the
Yeah.
store and pick it up, right? So if I can get them to think about it before they drive past other cannabis stores, I've won the battle. So we
Right.
started the year, you talk about measurement, we started the year about 15% of our orders were through the app or online. We grew that to 28% of our
That's
basket.
amazing. That's really
So
cool.
trying to do incentives digitally. So my goal for next year is, can we get to a third of all orders online and through the app? Because again, I've stopped them from driving past other people and they're interacting with our brand.
Yeah, not only that, then you also have a lever, right? Then you
Right.
know if I get more
Exactly.
app downloads, I get more notifications, I'm
Yep.
golden.
And we get their information, right? It's all,
Yeah,
that they opted in like everybody else.
yeah,
We
yeah,
follow all the rules of digital. Yeah.
yeah.
Because
And
they
that's
can
got to
pick
be a
your
great
favorite
experience
store.
too,
So
then,
you
right?
pick your
Yeah,
favorite store, we can talk to you, they know you. Then once they come in, we talked about this today. Our store experience has to be great.
yeah,
We did some recon. We're opening in New Buffalo. I'm not going to say the name of the competition because it's not fair, but I'm like, I want to shop these other stores, see how they do it. And one of them, we were in there literally for an hour and 45 minutes before it was that busy.
that's kind
Um,
of crazy.
and this poor lady behind me was like, I was talking with her. She just wanted one pack of gummies. She was 72.
Oh,
She
yeah,
goes there every week. And I go, why are you waiting so long? Well, for one pack, I go, there's plenty of stores, and well, they know me here. And she was got into her thing. I'm like, she goes, I go, what if someone walked through the line with an iPad and said, you know, can I take your order earlier while we're walking through, and we can do it digitally for you, since you're having trouble ordering on your phone and go picking it up. She goes, oh, that'd be a great idea. I'm like, oh, okay. So I take these little mental notes of like, talk to the consumer,
yeah.
of having a great experience. Cause she doesn't, you know who does not wait for anything?
Oh,
Retired people. The
yeah,
irony. It's like,
yeah.
oh, I can come back tomorrow 'cause I got nothing else to do. So I'm not going to wait an hour and 45
Right.
minutes. I learned that from the barber shop. I put myself through
Yeah,
school as a barber. So a retiree would drive up. If we had 6 people waiting, he's like, I'll come back later. Cause they can come
yeah. They
anytime.
come back whenever. Yeah,
Right. So it's
yeah.
funny. Always.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I also love the diversity of people that are walking into these stores
It's
and
it's
just
more than anybody can think. I'm telling you,
yeah,
it blew my mind. You thought you have one type of customer, but some people, it would blow your mind how many difference are. A lot of people for pain, a lot of people for sleeping, a lot of people like,
yeah,
it's not what you think.
yeah. I love it. Joe, I could talk to you forever. So here's my last question for you,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
before we kind of close up here. But the beauty of advertising and marketing is it's constantly changing. And then you overlay cannabis into it, which is even changing even more rapidly. How do you even stay ahead? How do you think about these things? What's your process for just, looking at emerging trends and technologies?
Boy, I don't know if I am ahead of it. I feel like I'm on the treadmill. Um, I try to just follow what consumer behavior is. How are
Yeah.
they how are they thinking about it? And then also paying attention. There are some things out there that we can talk about, or that we can that newsletters and things like that that have some digital help from us, with some of our partners that are
Mm,
always creating new tools. Because I think that it's all going to stem on what happens federally and what happens from a
yeah.
scheduling point of view of where cannabis is at. Because if it changes in the government, we can change a lot what we can do. For instance,
Right.
if it gets scheduled down, now Google becomes something,
Right.
right? So now what happens to the people that we are working with that have taken the risk? How are they going to compete?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do right now, what we can do on Google is our store ratings.
Right.
They can rate us. There's no, and that's an incentive. That's what we try to strive on. Like, give us great Google ratings, because once Google can pop, now we can maybe buy
Then
some
you'll be
ads from
ready to
them
go.
and that kind of thing. So we're trying to prep for what happens legally and put some tentacles into the areas that we can do things,
Yeah.
and stay there. But also working with our third party partners that have better data than we have across the country, and where trends are going, what types of products are, we can pull that from store sales daily. Like, oh wow, gummies
Right.
grew 35% this year. Maybe we are reaching that customer. Or fresh, or we decided, like, oh wow, we know that what's called a deli style in our stores, on the east side does really well. We don't do that on the west side. Let's try it. So
Mhm.
things like that. That's how we try to keep up ahead. And there's some great brands out there, like Wild is a gummy brand that's national. Jeter is probably the best marketing. It's the Nike of pre-rolls, because
Oh,
they're
that's
they're they're
interesting.
they're they're everywhere. I'm not necessarily the top tier stuff you're going to get, but it's everywhere. It's a brand people know that, and they've done a good job of becoming a lifestyle brand from selling apparel and everything else. So
That's so interesting. I
watching
love
good
it.
brands, yeah, helps us
Yeah, you
too.
just kind of have to emulate what you see. But I think it's your app idea and like being able to. I think about like if marketing is this river, you've got a dam put it in front of you, and that
Yeah,
you can't go this way, and so you have found ways to go, sideways. I think that there's a lot other brands can learn from the cannabis industry because they can take the easy way. They can look at Google and Meta and go, all right, great, I'm going to throw all my money there.
yeah.
It's, I mean, how many apparel brands have an app that they're using and they're paying SMS and email fees every day? And um, our friends at Tapcart are going to love this because I'm a big fan of Tapcart because it makes it really easy for our Shopify app to come up. And you've
Oh,
just
nice.
talked about how like valuable it's been for you guys. And so there are things like that where you have been forced to think about some of the harder things first because the easy stuff is not available to you. And I
Right.
think a lot of other people can learn
And
from
don't
that.
forget that we have to be better at too is the physical experience. Like, I was
Right.
just talking to our team today. I'm like, why does Chick-fil-A have 50 people in line that get through it? Burger King not doing so great.
Yeah.
And they don't think about the store experience, right? Like, you go into a Chick-fil-A or Apple, for instance, are the same. A Chick-fil-A, there's not like 3 people working like at
No.
Burger King. There's 30,
Yeah.
and they're all doing it. And that you get in and out, the food is great, it's consistent. There's not, Best Buy has this one experience, but Apple has 40 people working in the store
Yeah.
to help you as a store experience. So we're talking about that constantly. How do we make that experience so that it is word of mouth as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome. If someone wants to find you online, where can people learn more about you?
Oh boy. For our company, you can look up, we're at Timber and Timber Canna on Instagram and those kind of things, and cloud stores. Stash Ventures is not really, it's kind of our thing there. But if you want to
Yeah.
find me, on Instagram is, the average avgjoe.co is my name there. And LinkedIn, obviously, if you want to hit me up, that's my full name. I've really enjoyed LinkedIn over the last 3 years. I think it's probably the best social network out there now,
Yeah.
personally.
I'll add you. I'll add your LinkedIn in the show notes so that way people can find you pretty
That'd
easily.
be
But
great.
thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Samir, thank you so much. Super happy to be part of this.